Well, thank you so much for having me, Ron. I am Kandyce Bohannon, and I'm a senior solutions architect at AWS. I'm really excited to be with you today to talk about MLOps and how you can implement these processes and solutions by using Amazon SageMaker. So here's just a brief agenda, what we'll go through, kind of setting up why we need MLOps, what it is, and some of the functionality we have available for you. And so to start with, I think it's important to set the stage of, what is machine learning in general? How did we get to this place where we need MLOps and all of those sort of things? So we're seeing machine learning being applied in a lot of different ways. I like these four buckets of machine learning problems that are being solved. So we're seeing companies use models to gain greater efficiency around their existing processes, whether that's like supply chain, forecasting issues. We're also seeing a lot of people using machine learning models to help them make faster and better solutions so that they can get those solutions out to their customers more quickly. We're also seeing some machine learning models being applied to existing capabilities, just adding some additional smarts to things that you're already developing. And then it's also opened up a brand new area where people can develop net new products using machine learning. So lots of different areas that people are applying these. And over the last 10 years, we've gotten a lot better at doing machine learning development, generally speaking. We are seeing a bit of this, I think he calls it the AI pilot paradox, which I'll talk a little bit more about on the next slide. But basically, we're seeing that people are definitely experimenting and getting better at doing these machine learning development processes, but we're not doing as great getting them out to production. And a few reasons that we think this is that, we're getting better at the code. Algorithms are basically a commodity. We have them around us everywhere. You can find code like Stack Overflow, Hugging Face. You can find this code everywhere. So that's becoming really easy. Well, relatively easy, let's say. But then whenever we are publishing the model, that is where it gets more difficult. And after we publish the model as well, we need to kind of monitor the model and make sure that it's behaving as we expect it to once it's been deployed. So based on a study from Gartner, actually 2 years ago, so this is a 2020 study. So when it says today, do minus 2 years. So only about 50% of these piloted like POCs and machine learning are actually making it out to production. And it's taking 9 months to do so. So that's a really long time and a pretty low percentage of success overall. And that's because we've been doing all of this for over a decade, right? And at AWS, we've been doing machine learning for a very long time. But we're not, like we showed on the last couple of slides, the movement to getting those out to production is just a little bit more difficult. And so I like to kind of focus on why and how can we make that better, which is where MLOps comes into play. So MLOps is a combination of people, process, and technology. It's not just the technology, although that's the part that I really like to geek out about. There's definitely a whole aspect of processes, which can be different from company to company. And you have to get your people on board to do this as well. So it's kind of like DevOps, but a little bit more. And so whenever we do some of these MLOps processes and have them embedded into our overall flow and how we work, then we are seeing those models get out to production at a higher success rate and more quickly than 9 months. So here's a slide that kind of explains how MLOps is a little bit different from DevOps. So it is like DevOps, like I said before. It has all of the same things as DevOps, but then there's more to it. So with machine learning, whenever we're talking about scalability, repeatability, all of those sort of things, the data is so important to keep along with our code. So MLOps, in addition to having our pipelines and our version system and all of those things, we also need to keep up with our data sets and how does the data change throughout that time. We need to store our models, of course, and our hyperparameters. So we spend all this time, fine-tuning these hyperparameters. It's important that we save those along with our other model artifacts so that we can repeatably repeat that experiment on our own. So I can go to a place such as Hugging Face, download that code and repeat and get the exact same results that the original author did. So that's a little bit about how MLOps is a little more than DevOps. So whenever we are talking about machine learning in AWS, the first thing that you should usually think of is SageMaker. So SageMaker has multiple different subservices and functionalities available to help you adopt and implement these MLOps processes across your organization that fit with the way that your organization does work. So by using Amazon SageMaker, you can definitely easily use all of these other integrations with other AWS services, and just the way that AWS is developed with kind of an API first sort of mentality. You can also swap things out. So if there's a piece of the puzzle that you would prefer to use, say GitHub or something instead of code commit, that's possible to do. And we'll talk about that in a few slides from now. We'll also dive into how we can automate these ML workflows to accelerate the whole process of building, training, and deploying your ML models. And those pipelines, the SageMaker pipelines, are the piece that kind of show us how to do CI/CD so that you're not doing the same thing again and again and doing it manually. People make mistakes. Automation is always your friend in development and especially deployment. I mentioned before that we do need to kind of automatically track that code lineage, our data sets, how do they change over time, and the model artifacts throughout the whole entire ML lifecycle for governance, regulatory sort of reasons as well. And then the piece that I skipped over, I actually think it's really important, but I had to cut some of it from the presentation just because I only have 20 minutes with you, a little bit less than that today. So model monitoring is a very important part that I hope you all go learn a little bit more about. But as you know, whenever machine learning models are developed, they're trained based on past data that we have in hand. And then when we do deploy our model, let's say it's deployed right now, not 9 months, it's deployed right now. Now we're using it to predict the future. So the longer we use the model, the further it gets from the original data set that we use to train the model. So for all these reasons, it's really important that we monitor our model and make sure that we're looking for model drift. So is our model still performing as we expect it to? There's also something called data drift. So is our data still coming in as we expect it to? And then concept drift. Are we still solving the right business problem? It always starts with the business problem. So that's an important thing to keep your eye on. And then bias, detecting bias, we can do that in multiple ways. The main service within AWS that you would use for that is called Amazon SageMaker Clarify. And so with that, you can detect bias in your data set or your model along the way. And Clarify is another thing that I really love and don't have enough time to talk with you about today. So Clarify and SageMaker Model Monitor are follow-up items for you to go and check out. So what we will be talking about today are these three main components available to you in SageMaker. So this is like a very high-level diagram of what things look like. And we're going to start by talking about Amazon SageMaker pipelines. So these pipelines are basically what you have in place to help you automate the workflow for the model build and model deployment steps of the process. Our picture here is only showing the model build, but later, it's one of my last slides. You'll see how it kind of all fits together. So my background is in app development. I double majored in math and computer science and DevOps. So I like all of these things. And what I really like about pipelines is that we can define these pipelines as code. So it's very easy to understand and document exactly how they're supposed to behave. And the way that we do that is first we create the step. So you see in this picture here, we have each of our steps in each of these nodes. And so we define those in code, which I'll show you on the next slide. And then once we have all of our steps in the pipeline defined, then we start to piece together our pipeline. So that's what you can see here in step 2, where all of these nodes are kind of linked together. And then, of course, we can execute that pipeline pretty simply using the SageMaker SDK or Boto 3. So this is a little code snippet of what it looks like when we define our training step. So you can see in here that we have given it a name. We're telling it the estimator to use. And most importantly, we're specifying where our training data set is, as well as our validation step. So this is a simple training step that you can define in the code. And then step 2 here, you can see that we can define the pipeline. So we've named our pipeline here, and we have various parameters that we're passing in. And then we have the steps that we're piecing together. So we've already created each of these steps and given them a name, and that way we can reference them later when we're piecing together our pipeline. And then starting the pipeline is a very simple pipeline.start sort of command, and then you can kick everything off. So in that pipeline example that we just walked through, the last step there was around registering your model. So you're probably wondering, what is a model registry? And guess what? It's sort of like version control, but a little bit more. So your model registry is a central repository for you to manage various versions of your model. Here's a little snapshot of what it looks like within SageMaker Studio. You can see here that we have a few different versions of this model available. You can see what stage they're in, like where are they deployed and things like that. And so whenever we add a new version of a model to our model registry, then we could set up notifications or something like that. But essentially what we want to happen here is something like a PR, just like we would do with regular code in GitHub. And so you can go in here and you double click on your next version, and then another window will kind of pop up for you so that you can easily see your metrics associated with this particular model, so you know how it's performing. If you wanted to, you could also go back and check out the code, whether that's in code commit or your some Git-based repo. And then whenever you kind of look it over and decide this is good or bad, there's this big orange button here where you can update the status, and that's where you would actually approve or kind of deny that model from going on to the next step. And just like before with the pipelines, we can also define this within code. So you can create a model group from within SageMaker Studio. You can register these model versions in a register model step within your pipeline, like we saw before. And so this is what you would do in SageMaker SDK, and this is how you would do it within Boto 3. So this is kind of how you do it in code, and then it'll show up there in that model registry so that you have a nice catalog of all the versions all together. So that is a bit about kind of the pipelines and the model registry. But then we have SageMaker projects, that is basically your one big template that kind of pieces all of this together. So that's the orange box all around it, like that. And what's cool about these project templates, this is where you actually specify, like, where is my source code control? What are my triggers? What does my pipeline look like? How do I want to deploy things? And we have, I believe it's 5. Last time I checked, it was 5 project templates out of the box that you can choose from. And then if those are not actually suitable for your internal SOPs, you can also create your own custom MLOps projects. And you can make that available to show up in for your data scientists and developers to use by saving it in the AWS service catalog. So a pre-step before we can actually use projects, you do have to enable projects whenever you're creating your SageMaker Studio domain. So personally, I've been playing around a lot in SageMaker Studio because it's a web-based IDE where I have all of my machine learning stuff available to me just in one spot, so I don't have to click around in a bunch of different areas. So whenever you create your SageMaker Studio domain, you get to specify the roles that can use this domain. You get a file system underneath there. And this is also where you can specify which VPC is going to be used. And so you could actually restrict internet access so that there's no external access via your VPC. And that way, that might be one of those things that you need to do for compliance reasons. Like if you are in financial services or something like that, it would definitely be a good idea to have one of those more locked down VPCs just to reduce the attack vectors of this domain. So once we've set up our SageMaker Studio domain and we're ready to make our project, you can access the projects. You can create a new project from your SageMaker resources tab, which is available in SageMaker Studio. From here, from this little dropdown that I'm hovering over here, you can also access your model registry and experiments, all kinds of things that are available to you in SageMaker Studio. So you would create your project just like this. And then over here, you see that we have 3 different templates. So you can decide if you want to use SageMaker projects for building and training, if you want to do build, train, and deploy, however much you want to templatize there, you absolutely can. And then, like I mentioned before, if you wanted to create your own organization specific template, you can do that as well. And that would show up under this, I don't know, toggle button for you here. Those would show up for you. So here it is all together. So here is a high-level services view of how it would all work together whenever you're using SageMaker projects for MLOps. So this is the build, train, and deploy template using all native AWS services. And like I mentioned before, you can kind of swap things out. So we do have templates available that it will allow you to use GitHub for your source control and Jenkins for your deployments and things. So whatever you're comfortable with. But you see here, we have a data scientist who is contributing code, which then we have an event that's going to kick off our model build pipeline. So this is what our model build pipeline looks like with code build under the covers, our various steps. We're saving all of our model artifacts in a secured S3 bucket. And then I like that we have these kind of manual steps. So this is that PR step when another person comes in to review that model and make sure that it's good. So once we say that the model is good, then we have another event that's kicked off and another pipeline. So this is our deployment pipeline. And you'll see here that there's a lot of code build, which creates some CloudFormation templates for us that actually creates the SageMaker endpoint. And so you need that SageMaker endpoint whenever you're deploying your model. That is what I mean when I say deploy the SageMaker model. And again, another thing that kind of makes me happy is this manual approval step. So it's really important that we try things out in a staging environment or lower environment before we release those out to production. So this is kind of an overview of how it all looks together. And here's my final bit of a slide, just a few resources that I wanted to provide to you, and Ron will share out these slides with you after the event. There's a few documentation type of links that I would recommend starting in. And then I put in links to my 3 favorite blogs. And you'll see that they're really focused on security, because I do think security is foundational to everything. And here at AWS, security is job zero. So it's really important that you start with security in mind. So I really like those blogs that are listed there, as well as pipelines. Pipelines are the workhorse of ops in general, the DevOps, MLOps, DevSecOps. So I think these are some good places to start. And if you have any questions and are an existing AWS customer, definitely reach out to your account team and we can help you get going and get started on that. And hopefully with all of this, finish just a couple minutes early, you have a good foundation for you to get started with your MLOps journey within AWS. And so that is all that I have for now. So thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Kandyce.